There are few cinematography techniques more noticeable than a zoom shot, and for this reason, a zoom can be jarring. Some filmmakers view zooming as a powerful tool to create dynamic imagery, while others avoid it at all costs. So, how should you use a zoom?
You got like 3 feet of air that time.
This is the ultimate guide to zoom shots.
Scale up. Enhance.
Before we enhance, be sure to subscribe to StudioBinder and enable notifications to stay in the know on all things filmmaking.
Enhance it.
Now, let's zoom ahead.
Zoom in on that thing. What is that?
A zoom is traditionally thought of as a change in the lens's focal length during a shot, altering the field of view. It is achieved using a zoom lens. Zoom lenses can look very different depending on the length and model. But generally, they consist of multiple lenses, some of which are fixed and some of which slide within the casing. Most zoom lenses are parfocal, meaning they maintain focus as the focal length changes. A zoom lens that does not retain focus through changes to its focal length is referred to as a varifocal. Zoom lenses can be contrasted with primes, which are lenses that have a fixed focal length.
What is the fundamental aesthetic distinction between a zoom and a dolly?
At first glance, a zoom shot can look similar to a dolly or a push-in. But while a zoom refers to a change in focal length, a dolly moves the camera itself. Optically, this means that a zoom changes the compression of space, while a dolly retains the same sense of depth. This is what makes a zoom feel more dramatic and noticeable than a simple push-in, since they create an effect that cannot be recreated with the human eye. In the beginning, zoom lenses were mostly relegated to newsreels, but they started to be used on Hollywood narratives in the 1920s and 30s. This led to a proliferation of zooms in the 1960s and 70s, the technique becoming a calling card of auteurs like Robert Altman and Brian De Palma. By the 90s, zooms had largely fallen out of favor, becoming associated with a low-budget or dated style. Cinematographer Jay Holben explains.
They unfortunately get a bad reputation that I think dates way back to the introduction of the zoom, and like any new tool, they get overused creatively. And there was a bad reputation for the quality of the zoom lenses that didn't come up to the quality of prime lenses.
Today, though, zooms are experiencing something of a resurgence. A retro technique favored by celebrated filmmakers like the Safdie brothers, Wes Anderson, and Ari Aster. So, to zoom or not to zoom? To answer that question, we need to delve into the technical aspects of the zoom. There are reasons some filmmakers are reluctant to use zoom lenses beyond just the aesthetic of a zoom itself. In the past, zooms have typically been slower than prime lenses, meaning they capture less light. This is because there are usually more elements inside a zoom than a prime, so less light reaches the film or sensor. Zooms have also been known to be less sharp than their prime counterparts, which is usually most visible at a longer focal length. Today, however, newer zoom lenses can be very fast and sharp, but these options are often much more expensive than a prime would be. On the other hand, a good zoom lens is worth several primes, and as such can save time on set. You can change focal lengths without having to swap a lens. Cinematographer Case Van Ostrom explains, "On the kind of shows I do right now, primes are not really the way to go because they are really too time-consuming to deal with, especially because of the multiple camera setups that we're using. So it's almost inevitable that we shoot a whole show with zooms. This was also the preferred method of Robert Rodriguez, who was shooting the ultra-low-budget El Mariachi.
This is how you get 5 shots in one take. Basically, I shoot his first line of dialogue here in the wide, then I zoom in for his second line, which is a little more threatening, zoom back out to get this wide shot of the guitar case going up. And I'm doing this because I wanted to make it look like I've shot this all day with different lens sizes.
Zen, estoy seguro. ¿Qué traes en el estuche?
Mi guitarra.
No me digas que eres un mariachi, cabrón.
When changing focal lengths during a shot, the camera operator will typically use a mechanical gear to ensure smooth and steady movement. On Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick and cinematographer John Alcott used Cinema Products' joystick zoom control, which allowed for even smoother zooms. Alcott explains, "It starts and stops without a sudden jar, which is very important, and you can manipulate it so slowly that it almost feels like nothing is happening."
You think you're big enough for the hunt, do you?
Oh, yes, Papa. Jonathan Plunkett is only a year older than I am, and he rides with his Papa.
Well, I'll have to think about it.
Oh, please say yes, Papa. There's nothing I want in the whole world more than a horse.
I'll think about it.
Oh, thank you, Papa. Thank you.
While the camera operator zooms, the first AC will operate focus, occasionally needing to adjust if the zoom lens isn't truly parfocal. Of course, a zoom effect can be achieved without a zoom lens by zooming digitally, which refers to automating an image's size in post-production. When zooming digitally, 2 factors need to be taken into account. The first is image quality. Digital zooms work best when the footage is a larger resolution than the final output. This is because if you zoom into footage beyond its resolution, the quality will degrade to the naked eye. Second, a digital zoom does not have the same effect on the parallax. A zoom lens will compress space as it zooms in, for example, while a digital zoom will not, since the focal length is remaining the same.
I don't remember this being here.
Zoom effects can also be created in animation, even if there is no focal length to adjust. Instead, animators imitate the changing of focal length by changing the perceived depth in an image while pushing forward or backward. With these technical aspects in mind, let's look at the most common types of zooms. All zoom shots can be placed into 2 categories: zoom in or zoom out. A zoom in typically directs your attention to a specific detail, whether it be a meal or a character's emotion. This kind of zoom can also build a tension that wouldn't be there with a cut. A zoom out, meanwhile, takes a point of focus and then situates it within a larger context. For Barry Lyndon, Kubrick had a custom zoom lens built that could range from 24mm to 480mm in focal length, allowing for massive zooms that could completely alter the composition of a frame. The speed of a zoom impacts its effect on a shot. A slower zoom, for example, can create a meditative mood and is typically more subtle. A faster zoom is more noticeable and can heighten the sense of drama. Go even faster and you'll have a snap zoom, also known as a whip or crash zoom. These highly stylized shots can be used for comedic effect, to add energy to action sequences. or to emphasize a dramatic moment. There is also the micro zoom. Small, quick adjustments to a frame, which we often associate with documentary filmmaking. As such, these types of zooms are typically seen in gritty, realist filmmaking. Another common technique is the dolly zoom, where the camera pushes in while zooming out, or vice versa. For more on that shot, check out our video on the subject.
They're here.
Of course, we're only scratching the surface of what a zoom can do. There are many more creative uses. Because zooms are so often associated with specific genres of the 60s and 70s, filmmakers will use them to evoke that time period.
I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5?
This is a favorite technique of Quentin Tarantino, whose crash zooms are often an homage to kung fu films and B-movies. Zooms can also be used for ironic effect, making a mundane action feel over the top. A zoom can even help underscore a film's themes. In The Conversation, zooms establish an aesthetic of surveillance. It feels as though a character is being watched by a person behind a camera. Zooms can also be paired with camera movement to create effects beyond a dolly zoom. This shot from Goodfellas both tracks with the character and zooms in, adding a frantic and paranoid energy to the montage. In Once Upon a Time in the West, the camera circles around a subject while zooming in, making the character's reveal feel all the more imposing. This shot from Casino Royale utilizes both a zoom in and a crane, which compresses the construction setting around the character. Bond is closing in. And for maximum chaotic impact, you can use a zoom with a Dutch tilt, as is done in Crane.
Can you hear me?
Or a zoom can be paired with a split diopter. In this shot from The Untouchables, the diopter is removed from the lens, literally shifting focus from the character in the foreground to the character in the audience. Zooms can be combined with other techniques, like overlays or step printing, adding even more energy to a sequence. This is a favorite technique of Tony Scott. Zoom shots can also be paired together, heightening anticipation or suspense. Zooms can also be created through multiple prime shots, as Zack Snyder did in 300, using filming with multiple cameras at once and combining them in post. Zooms can also be a great transitional tool, bringing us out of one scene and into another. Zooms may be too stylized for some filmmakers, but it's hard to argue with a great zoom shot. Use them wisely, but don't write them off. Plan for your next zoom shot with StudioBinder's storyboarding and shot listing software. That's it for now. We've reached the end of our focal length.